is Nikki. I'm a graduate student at UTA, and today I'm going to show you how to use the microplate reader UV-Vis. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is to find a microplate. These have 96 wells, and this is what you're going to load your sample on. If you want to use one that's already been used, typically people mark out the wells that have been used with Sharpie so that your sample doesn't get contaminated. And so any wells that aren't marked with Sharpie, you're free to use. You want to make sure that for whatever kind of sample that you're using, the way that you prepared your sample, you want to have a matrix match blank to account for any interferences. And then for whatever samples you have, you'll be loading those as well. Okay, so when you're ready to load your samples, you'll notice on the left side there'll be letters A through H, and then along the top you have numbers 1 through 12. And so you want to be able to keep track of what samples you're putting in what well by using the appropriate letter and number. So for example, I'm first going to load the blank, and also you want to make sure that you're loading at least 100 microliters and not less than that, otherwise you're not going to coat the whole bottom of the well, and that could cause issues with reading the absorbance. So first I'm going to load my blank, and I'm going to put this into A6. And I'm going to write that down on my piece of paper. And then for my first sample, I'm going to load into A7. And I'm going to switch tips because I don't want to contaminate. Put into B6. And then I'm going to get rid of my tip and use a new one. To pull from. Okay, so hopefully you've kept track of what samples you put in which well, so that when you get your results, you know what samples the results are for. This is the UV-Vis. In order to get your plate in there, you'll see a box that says microplate and a button that says in and out. If it's closed, you press it and it should come out. And then you'll see a little tick here that says A1. That's where the A1 on your plate should go. It should just fit right in there. And then you push the in out button again and it'll close it up for you. So once your plate has been loaded and the machine is closed, you'll then go over to the computer. If this screen isn't already up, there's a little icon down at the lower left that you'll just double click on, and this should pop up. This is the opening screen. So the first thing you want to do is click on Manage Protocol so that you can create your protocol, and then you'll click the New tab to create a new one, and then the endpoint is the default, just click OK. And then there'll be an option to name your protocol. I'm going to name this UV test. And you're going to want to select the type of microplate that you're using. It has to do with the brand name, so we are using the Grenier 96 flat bottom microplate, so I'm going to select that. And I also want to select spectra instead of discrete wavelengths. And my range is going to be 220 through to 850. And then I'm going to keep the resolution at 2. This means that we can't go above 2 absorbance. If we do, it's no longer going to be linear. So if your samples are going above 2 and you're trying to do a standard calibration curve, you're going to want to make sure that you dilate your samples to get those concentrations within about 1 to 2 absorbance. Also, you're going to want to make sure that the path length correction is turned on. When you do the path length correction, you're going to want to provide the volume that you put into the wells. Hopefully you put in the same volume for each of your wells, and it'll tell you what length the light is going to be running through, which is really important for the absorbance calculation. And click Layout, and there'll be options here for the content. So there's either a sample, blank, or standard. So we know that we loaded our blank into A6. You're going to want to click blank and then double click the well that it's associated with, and it'll fill it out for you. And so then we have samples in A9, B8, and B9. If you're wanting to do a standard calibration curve, make sure that you always label your blank. You're going to want to blank no matter what. And then instead of clicking sample, you're going to click standard. And then click wherever your dilution of standards are. And then the next tab you'll see says concentrations. Click that, and then you can put the ppm concentrations for the standards that you've created in your dilution. So once you have your layout set up and you have your blank and your samples labeled and the microplate is in the reader and the machine is closed, or the instrument is closed, then you can hit OK on this panel and your run should start. After you click Start Measurement, another pop-up may come up that tells you to ensure that your microplate is inserted. You don't have to do anything on this page, just continue with Start Measurement. And now it is running. So now it says saving data. It happens really quickly. Pause it. So after your run is completed, the microplate UV-Vis will eject your sample. You can go ahead and take it out and close it. Once your run is complete, you'll see a panel up here that says results, and you'll have the option to open last test run. You'll click on that, and there'll be a bunch of tabs at the top. If you click microplate view, it'll show you the A through H and 1 through 12, just like your microplate is set up. And number 6 was my blank, and then these are my samples here. So there's nothing in my blank, which is good. If I click on one of my samples, you'll see a blue line and a red line. The blue line is after the correction, and so if you hover over the peak, it'll give you an X and the Y. The X is corresponding to the wavelength, and then the Y is corresponding to the absorbance. So my absorbance is 3.76, that's higher than 2, so we probably need to dilute this sample a bit. But if we go to another sample and view its peak, the wavelength is at 608, and then the absorbance is at 0.756, so that one's okay. Another option you have here is table view, and it'll list at each wavelength the absorption values for your blank and all your samples. So if you know what absorption value you want to create a calibration curve for, or what you want to record your results for, this is where you get that data. So once you're ready to plot your calibration curve, you'll just open an Excel file and create 2 columns, one for your sample ID and the other one for your absorbance. So go ahead and name your sample IDs. Make sure they're not just numbers, or else Excel will get a little confused. So I have sample 1, say through 5, and then the absorbance for my blank was 0 for sample 1, 0.1, then I'll just increment by 0.1. And then select all the data. You're going to click Insert, Scatter Plot, and then just select the first option here. And then here is your absorbance values plotted. If you right click on the data points and select Add Trend Line, you can add your R² value onto your chart there, so you can see if your calibration curve is good. So since I made up this data, I have a perfect R² value of 1. That means that my graph is completely linear, and this is as perfect as a calibration curve can get. Once you're done and you're ready to get rid of your samples, you'll just put them in the waste, and then you're going to want to make sure to mark the wells that were used so the whole plate doesn't go to waste and somebody else can use the rest of the wells.